Can you get too much of a good thing? Probably. We're going to talk about that today on the Man Space.
Fluke, Greg.
Welcome to the Man Space Podcast. We're your hosts, Doctors Matt Brown and Rob Porter, and clinical therapist Mike Porter.
You can't make me laugh like that. Welcome, Spaceman. Dude.
Where did you get this cold, Rob?
What? I had a cold? Is that what you said?
No, where did you get it?
Oh.
Like, did you pick this up over Thanksgiving?
Yeah, my Whitney had it 3 days before school ended.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then...
Yeah, because I was worried I was going to get it.
Yeah, and then Bex and Stu got it. And then about on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, I was like, oh, crap. And then...
were you telling yourself, I don't get sick? I don't get sick.
Yeah, I all
work.
the time. Like, that's not, I was like, that's not what that is. That's something else. It's this. It's not. And then sure enough, but it actually ties into our topic today. So I was like,
yeah,
it's because I actually lost my sense of smell and taste for like 3 days, which is funny because I mentioned that to a client. She's like, oh, so you had COVID? And I was like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, I mean, I used to lose my smell and taste all the time when I would get colds growing up. Yeah, all the time. Your sinuses get packed and pressured, and then you can't.
Like it gets dampened, right? You don't lose it completely.
Like I would lose it.
Wow. Well, you give me hope. If yours came back,
Mine's back now already.
Yeah.
As of last night, I got so excited. My kids were like, "Dad, we get it. You can taste." I was like, "You guys, this dinner is so good."
Did you even lose taste of soda?
Yes.
And has it changed permanently?
No. Although this morning I had just the slightest hint of ammonia, and that's what happened to me with
regular.
It was just floating around in my.
Oh.
So I was like, "Oh crap!" But no, it didn't. I drank part of a Mountain Dew just to see, and it was like, no, it's fine.
That's weird, man. Because I didn't have maybe I started getting maybe a little bit of the same thing, and then I had insanely heightened smell.
Oh, yeah.
For a day. So we went to a few stores, that breath smell you're talking about.
Oh.
A few of the people that were interacting with us, they were probably 5 feet away from me. And I was like, I'm going to puke. And my daughter was with me. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then we were walking through the mall and she had to get some birthday presents for some people. And yeah, I was like, dude, I'm smelling everybody in here. And nobody smells good. And then we walked by the Yankee Candle place, and this lady, I guess they just weren't getting any business. She came like flying out of the store with like a fire extinguisher pressured little tester bottle, just hosed the whole area outside with some candle smell. Right as I was walking by, and I was like, oh, and then the people behind me were like, trying to wave it out of the air. It was a smell experience.
Well, I do want to relate just really briefly for all our spacemen listeners who care, because we all know that Mike left.
It's true.
He's replaced his cap
to Kansas City.
It's true.
The Sporting KC. That's what their soccer team. So let's talk briefly for a second. Deprivation. That's what we're talking about today. I guess I have not said that yet. You at one point, Matt, called it rituals, I think, of deprivation. Which sounded, when you said that, I was like, are there known rituals? I guess fasting is a ritual of deprivation.
Yeah.
But or did you just mean it's good for us to deprive ourselves?
I guess I guess I would say deprivation, but also intentionally induced pain or discomfort.
Yeah, that's an interesting.
Exercise.
Well, I guess in some ways, yes, but it's interesting when you say intentionally induced.
Yeah, because here's the difference, I think. So, I can't remember if this was a study or just, I'm guessing it was because
I'm just making this stat up like I do everything else.
Hey.
They measured things.
Well, those rats are there's a certain mouse or rat wheel where there's two parts to it. And if they're both on it, if one starts running, it like spins the other one. So the other one has to start running too.
Oh, yeah.
So what they found is like the one that chose to start running experienced all the benefits of exercise,
Oh,
but the other
fascinating.
one experienced all the downsides of stress. So
So the
like
self-inflicted
the
actually
intentional
matters.
part, I
Right.
think is really
Yeah.
important because, I don't think there's any benefit to just being like shoved into an uncomfortable situation or forced into an uncomfortable situation.
Right.
But the act of choosing, like
That's
there's a lot of
actually
benefit that can come from it.
that's actually really interesting. And I do want to clarify something because when you say self-inflicted pain, I want to clarify, even though this
Yeah.
should seem obvious, this is not, we're not saying like, and therefore self-harm or cutting is or
Well, and I
good.
guess when I say pain too, I'm thinking like, to your point, I guess it's more like there's a purpose to it. It's not like
Yeah.
it's not like self-harm or
Right. You're not hurting. You're not
or
trying to
like-
hurt yourself.
right, like eating disorder related stuff
Yeah,
or
yeah,
things like that.
right.
Yeah.
But it's interesting when you say that because I think of, Mike, you say exercise. And I think, oh, exercise is actually a really good example of a type of, I guess we could call it deprivation, or depriving yourself of something. That's probably a better way to phrase it. Because deprivation, people shouldn't live in deprivation,
Mm-hmm.
but depriving yourself of something is not a bad thing.
No, and I think it activates all sorts of like natural mechanisms in your body that are
Right.
like needed for cleaning things out.
Yeah.
Yeah, like fasting is a good example of
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
this, it's interesting because if, you get people where, well, you could take alcohol. I have multiple clients right now where they're like, please make my spouse stop drinking,
Mhm.
like, and it's kind of like, it's not going to, until they decide they want to do this, it's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of principle. It's like, I won't get the benefits of giving this up if you make me do this.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not to say you can't. Like someone, the rat, I guess, in those stories, the one who's having to run because the other one's running could decide, okay, well, I want to make this into something
Mm-hmm.
and could get something from it.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, yeah, the idea is that like if somebody's forcing you into something, you're not going to get any benefit from
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah. For the rat that chose to run, it's like, I'm going to make this wheel move. And the
Yeah.
other one's like, oh, crap, the wheel's moving.
That's what I think is interesting about, actually, this is a timely topic perhaps as well for the upcoming new year when everyone makes resolutions that they're going to give something up or start exercising. It's my
Oh, there goes Mike. Mike's depriving us of his presence.
Mike's like, this is boring.
Let's see how that four-step. Oh, that's the wrong light. Sorry, I'm trying to turn on my light.
I'd ask you to give us a tour, but I don't want to make our YouTube puke.
So
Sorry, I'm in my basement. Dark.
it's dark. So I think because New Year's is always when we've done episodes on like New Year's resolutions before.
Yeah.
But it's always when because I go out running and New Year's is like where it's like, oh, there's people everywhere at like 6 a.m. out running. I think, why'd you pick now?
You should just say that to everybody. You'll all be gone in 2 weeks. I'm the real
Some
runner.
of us actually run because it feels like, get off my sidewalk. So I think here's what I wonder. We talk about this. A, do you have examples? I'm going to have like 5 of these things. So let's just stay with me. Do you have examples of deprivation you find valuable? Or let me rephrase that. Depriving yourself of something you find valuable
Mm-hmm.
that you think maybe everyone should kind of engage in, whether, I'm
Like the thing that I'm depriving myself of is something that everybody should.
everyone should deprive themselves of. Like
Oh,
speak
yeah.
a little bit to like, we're always a little bit safe. Like, well, this isn't for everybody. This isn't this, but it's like, no, look, everyone should do this.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know that where you're like, I'm going to speak for all humankind. Anyone who's not doing this is a dummy. So I want to know the thing you think we should all be depriving ourselves of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say too, at some point we're going to turn this into not so much depriving yourself as much as self-control.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's a problem. We don't exist in a society where we're deprived of almost anything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to know too, where you can see maybe that pattern, and you can flip these in either direction, but where you can see the pattern of the lack of depriving ourselves or the lack of self-control, like how you can see that playing out somewhere, like either in yourself or in society or whatever. But then I want to know and this is kind of a weird question I don't have an answer to myself. What could we or should we be depriving ourselves of? And we're gonna have to define that depriving thing probably. Depriving ourselves of when it comes to relationships. Oh, snap.
Well, it's funny too, because as you're talking about things that everybody should deprive themselves of, we're probably saying these are things that we have like abundant access to. So are we really depriving ourselves by having less of it, or are we just bringing it back to normal levels?
That's
No, that's what I mean. Like,
yeah, that's a good question.
I think like anything that is low effort, high reward is
Yeah.
like, we have like so much. I was thinking about like at what point did we, like, maybe just in America, hit the tipping point where we had to start focusing, or we stopped focusing on getting enough food, and we started focusing on, oh crap, I shouldn't eat so much.
Yeah,
Like, was that in like the last century? You know, I'm definitely like post Great Depression, probably. So maybe like post World War II, we started to have abundant access to food. But now, like, it's such a weird problem to have. You know, like,
yeah, it's
I gotta not, you know, but it's so easy. Like, going to the so like that's one where there's like, for most of us, I know there are people that are like in a very different situation, even in our country. But like, but yeah, just getting food is so easy.
that's true. That's an interesting, because actually you could take that element. Like I was looking at pictures of Gaza recently from all these news things,
Yeah.
and I thought, looking at their things and thinking, dude, their life is so different than mine. To like walk around and not think, oh, I ate too much. It's usually like, I haven't eaten in 2 days, you know. Like they are going through serious bouts of deprivation in a number of things.
Yeah.
And then I compare it to like when I was in this is not necessarily a trait of where I was, but when I was in Oklahoma, I was sitting somewhere, and I remember looking and thinking 70% probably of the people I see in this room are overweight, and thinking, man, we just live a very different life. So it's a really good point to think we could just deprive ourselves of calories.
Yeah.
Like,
which is, I mean, again, like that's what most people think of, I guess, when they think of losing weight. But what you're saying is like, what impact would that have on our enjoyment of that thing?
Yeah.
And same thing with like I remember when the iPad first came out, this guy for like Time Magazine or something wrote this article where he's like, I bought it and I got rid of it in 2 days because I realized it was too good. Like, I could watch a movie in my bed. I could just throw it in my backpack and do this with it. And it's like, man, that would have been a smart way to think about this stuff before we were like totally up to our necks in it. And so, oh yeah, here's another good example. It was just like really super calming. So I went and visited my family for Thanksgiving, and my brother just bought this old like 74 Chevy pickup, and just riding in it and like smelling like exhaust when you got out,
dude.
So like, but when I look at it, I'm like, dude, there is like a steering wheel, a gear shift, a radio, and that's pretty much it. Like, but that back in the day would have been like, I am living the high life. I bought this nice new truck, and
it's got faux wood paneling.
Yeah, like so much less to think about. And so I think there is like this big like cognitive load that we take on that we probably don't even recognize when we're like more like in an indulgent state with a lot of things. Like, there's just a lot more going on in our brains about all of that. And like you said, reward centers are like habituated, whatever, to it's like the law of diminishing return, right? Where it's just like, I can have this anytime I want, so it's not that amazing. So I think anything, like a lot of people do social media fasts and things like that. And I remember I just did one over the summer, and it was really weird. It wasn't so much like when I got back on social media, I was like, oh man, this is so amazing.
I value this so much.
I got back on and I was like, I'd spent a week like just serving other people that like needed wheelchair ramps and stuff. And then I got back on and I remember feeling like sick to my stomach because I was like, everything that was coming through was somehow aimed at like making fun of somebody else, pointing out someone else's faults, or highlighting like some massive problem and who's to blame for it. And then,
Jesus,
you know,
really
like I was
impressive.
just like it helped. Like I was just able to see a lot more clearly, like this is the intent of this post.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
And not, I mean, obviously not everything's like that. There's people
course.
posting about happy
There are
events in
great
their lives,
things,
but
yeah.
I was just like, man, I don't want to, but before that it was just like, yeah, this is normal. Right.
Right.
So I think there are things like that when you get some space from it and you come back, it's like you have that choice point where it's like, how much do I want to bring this back into my life?
Yeah. It's it's really interesting, actually. Mike, one day you'll talk. But
Yeah.
it's been interesting thinking about I've told people before, like I gave up, I didn't drink any soda for like 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't it you were going to get a TV? Did you get it?
Was that my
I think you set yourself
I
a
do
goal that
remember
like the
that.
money that I would have spent on soda, I'm going to use to buy TV.
Dude?
Dude, I'm pretty sure if I gave up soda, I could buy a TV in way less than a year.
There I buy a TV in a month. There must have been something else. Or I did that because when I did it, I was just single and I was like, this isn't, I can't believe I'm putting this much in me. But that sounds
This was
so
recent.
familiar. Whatever it is.
It was like maybe when you were about to leave Lubbock or something.
Maybe.
You got to cash in on that TV.
I got to sell myself a TV still.
Get a fountain drink on the way.
But when I give it up, when I come back after I gave it up for that long,
Mm-hmm.
when I came back to it, it's like, this doesn't taste very good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it doesn't feel good in my body.
Yeah.
But I want it.
I was going to say, have you ever had that weird experience where psychologically you want it, but your body's rejecting it, but you're saying like, I'm going to make you.
Yeah. And I do that. That's what I do. Like I want it. And so I force it.
Yeah.
And I drink it slowly until I'm like, there, my body's adjusted to it now. People are like, why do you do that? I'm like, I don't have a good reason for it.
Well, that's actually why I don't drink sugared sodas anymore. Like after you did your stretch, I remember thinking, I want to try this. I want to see if I could do it. Because at the time, I was drinking probably north of 128 ounces a day.
I like that it was north of
That could be anything, any number north of.
Well, it's like what's 64 and 128?
Huh?
Oh, you drink one 64-ounce?
You drink two 64
I would
ounces.
typically drink 3 64 ounces a day.
Oh, snap.
That was awesome.
That's good. That's like 190.
You started at the 2/3 point.
196 or something.
So like it's not every day, but I was commuting an hour away and I was working at 6 a.m. and had kids, so I was up until 10 or so at night, and then getting up the next day at 4, and so I was pretty much staying awake off of soda. And then you did it, and I thought, I want to see if I can do it, and so I went New Year's Day to New Year's Day one year, and I remember coming back and drinking soda after a year and be like, ugh.
Yeah.
Like it was so sugary, and like I could drink not even a fourth of a can before I was like, oh, I think I'm going to be sick.
That's how most humans are.
Yeah. And then I switched.
But Rob's like, just
to
push
0
through.
sugar. So now I can drink as much as I want.
There's no risk.
Expanded my capacity.
So, but here's the thing. It's kind of interesting. I think there's two benefits from this depriving yourself of something, because I do think I understand depriving yourself of calories, for example, because you want to lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, in more of a mindful way, like if I saw actually it was a podcast of a woman saying, I don't drink Coke very often because I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to love it every time I drink it. She's like, when I drink it hard. Like, and it's like the day she's going to drink it, she's going to just down it. Yeah. And then she's like, but I don't want to lose my excitement for it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that's like, it's almost like saying, I want to keep this thing special.
Yeah.
And if we do it all, this is something I've realized as an adult, is kind of like, well, there's nothing that's stopping me from all the things I love. I can just do them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, but then they kind of mean nothing now.
But it's funny though, because that's like the thing that we pursue, right?
Right.
Is
you can do whatever you want.
I want to get to a point where I can do whatever I want. But when we get it, we're miserable. Like it's like that Louis C.K. bit, everything's amazing and no one's happy.
Yeah. It's going to the moon.
but I think there's like the deprivation thing to kind of preserve balance really and like
Yeah.
enjoyment. And then there's the flip side, which is like intentionally, I'm just going to call it like the Happy Gilmore batting cage. He just like takes balls in the chest. But
Yeah. But even,
I
go
think,
ahead.
well, I was going to say with that, I think that's the flip side of this, right? Where I'm going to do something that's really high effort
Yeah.
and kind of a delayed reward,
Yeah.
like a low, slow burning reward. I think if we don't have that, like things really get out of balance. For me, it's like one of the most depressing things is feeling like I can't get myself to do something that's important.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a really horrible place to be because you just feel like, things that you value are just slipping from you and like
Yeah.
somebody's just sitting on your chest. And I think when you're trying to do the thing that's hard for you or the thing that you really care about, but you can't get yourself to do it, I think sometimes just getting yourself to do something unpleasant,
Uh-huh.
like starts to build up that response where it's like, oh, okay, I can get myself over the hump. And
Right.
so yeah, I think the exposure to things is important too, along with the deprivation stuff.
That's because to me, I think that exposure thing, it's still a depriving thing.
Mhm.
If just to flip the other side,
Yeah.
it's like I'm depriving myself of comfort, for
Mhm.
example, or I'm depriving myself of whatever.
Yeah.
Like I think of some of these things we're talking about. That's not even a deprivation thing, but it's like I will go do hard things
Mhm.
and I'm depriving myself of the ease of like hiring somebody to do this instead of the discomfort or the struggle of learning to do this thing.
Mhm.
So that I thought Mike just snored. So that
What?
was Rob still talking? So that I can do all these, like the long-term gain that I get from
Mhm.
this. It's like exercise or lifting weights. Like I've thought about this recently. Someone's coming to do some stuff on my house, and it's stuff that I could do.
Mhm.
The things that always stop me is I always have in my head, I'm going to screw this up somehow, and then I'm going to have to double pay. Like I
Mhm.
paid to get the materials, and then I screwed it up, and so now I have to pay for those again to
Yeah.
have somebody else come do this.
Mhm.
And so I always chicken out and don't do it.
Mhm.
But what I'm having him do, I could do myself. And if I did, what I get from that is like, oh man, that's so much better for me.
Mhm.
Like there's that, I don't know, you could call it a theory, but that idea that like, depending on how much you make per year, that should kind of determine what you're hiring somebody else to do.
Mhm.
So if I'm making, arbitrarily 200,000 a year, then I should be hiring somebody to paint my house. I shouldn't be painting my own house
Mhm.
because I have money to do that now and I'm helping the workforce and all that
Yeah.
stuff. But then I think, but it does rob me of that kind of deprivation or what was the word you used? Not deprivation, the
Exposure.
exposure part of like,
Mhm.
I put myself in this thing that's like, I hated this whole process. Like I hate painting my house.
Yeah.
It does not feel relaxed. It's like, I want to punch this house. But when it's finished, I feel like I did that, man.
Yeah.
Like even a small dumb thing like painting my house, it feels like I accomplished this thing.
Mhm.
It builds something up in me.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting kind of side benefit if you like, because when you talk about leaving social media and then coming back to it feeling like I don't like, I think depriving ourselves does make us keep things meaningful or special, like they have an impact more.
Mhm.
I think the exposure part, I think, can help us like appreciate things that we have and increase our capacity or capabilities. But I also think that there is an element of just gives me a different perspective than what I had before
Mhm.
and shifts my priorities. Like, do I really need to have this thing?
Yeah.
Like the iPad, do I need to have this? Or is this just like, it was cool,
Mhm.
but it's not really benefiting me.
Yeah.
Like social media, if someone said do a social media fest, I'd be like, okay. I mean, I pretty much don't do it anyway.
Yeah.
TikTok, but, or do I? But I feel, go watch our Manspace TikTok page. I haven't been on there in like a month. I'm going to do these daily, guys, or not. But I think my perspective shifts because it's like, this doesn't do a lot for me.
Yeah.
I understand it does. It may do some good things for some people,
Mhm.
but I feel like, no. So those are a few benefits that I can see like, man, this is really valuable. I I want to keep, the biggest thing to me is I want to keep loving this thing.
Mhm.
Whatever this thing is, soda, I want
Yeah.
to keep loving it. I got to do it less so I can love it more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was all. Mike?
Well,
Like, because you're in Kansas City, you can get away with just like not talking.
please, I didn't talk before.
No wonder why that is.
Mhm. No, so I'm like one, like I get what you're saying, but I don't know. I have a couple of thoughts here. Like one, I want to love it more. One, how do you quantify that?
Do I have
Like,
to?
what the crap are we talking? Well, yeah, a little bit.
Well, no,
Like,
look,
if
I
you're gonna
mean,
deprive yourself of this thing you love so that you love it more. How are you quantifying that?
well, look, okay, look, I'll just say it this way so that I keep loving it.
Okay, we all know how much soda I drink. I don't hide it.
Yeah, okay.
If I could not drink water
Okay.
at all, I would stop drinking water.
That's so
It will kill
horrifying.
me, so I drink water because it's gross.
And you can
But
make
whatever.
a necklace out of your kidney stones.
Right? So that's why it's the kidney stones. That's why I drink water. So I don't have any more kidney stones. I'm not like, I don't hide any of this. I'm open about all of it. I still freaking love soda. Like,
Yes,
I look
but
forward to
wait,
my
wait.
first soda in the morning, every
Right.
freaking morning.
Right, but when was the last time you went like a day or two that you couldn't drink it?
I do it once a month.
Okay, so when you go back
There's
to
your
that,
soda fast.
when you go
Yeah.
back to your first one,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't it feel like this is so much better?
Yes, but give me a food I hate, and I will like it if I've not been eating for 24 hours.
Isn't that great?
No. There is no other time
Mike.
during the month that you could put that food in front of me and say, Mike, do you want this? And be like, oh,
Mike.
yeah, that was so good.
Then you
No.
could eat asparagus.
Oh, my gosh. Anytime you describe something as earthy in its flavor, hey, do you want to take – you should
No,
eat this.
look,
It tastes like dirt.
No, listen, I don't describe it that way. I describe asparagus as tasting, when it's good buttered asparagus, it tastes a little like popcorn.
Mm-hmm. So it tastes like
My wife
butter.
does not get it.
Wow.
So why not
I've
just
never
eat
thought of that
butter?
before.
So wait, Mike, your reaction to this sounds like you're saying, I don't see the benefit of depriving myself of something.
No, not at all. I'm just curious about the loving it more. Like, I don't know. To me, I guess that, like, I think there's lots of reasons to do it. And I think there's lots of good reasons to do it. It's the idea of so that I love it more, or so that I keep loving it. So what, I should deprive myself of my company, of my children, so I love them more? Like, if we were to apply this to relationships, we would not think this is a good idea.
I can disagree with that.
Okay, well, you're saying it about relationships, but I'll say this first. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, to an extent, sure. Like, we all know, like, COVID taught us, no, we should not be together 24 hours a day. Sure. But that's not like that's, I don't know, to me, that's not deprivation, that's life, right? It's when people come and talk to you about intermittent fasting. Yeah, I mean, so, like, I'll go from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. That's just dinner to breakfast. What are you talking about? That's dinner to breakfast.
He's Kansas City Mike.
Kansas City Mike has turned you saucy.
Like, you're not talking about deprivation. You're talking about living.
No, but wait.
That's just living.
No, but
so
listen.
If we're living, there is natural separation between us and another person. I don't have to force it. It just happens.
Right.
What you're talking about is saying, no, let's stop doing it. I'm going to intentionally deprive myself. I'm going to not talk to my wife.
Oh,
so that I
hold on.
appreciate her more.
I did not. Dude, Mike, you can't just take one principle and say this is how it applies to all things across the board.
Yes, I can. I'm just saying, like, if we're talking about this thing, like, because again, like, I do think deprivation has a place. I do think there's benefit in it. I'm talking about this idea of doing it to love something more. If we were to apply that principle to relationships, we would say, no, that's a bad idea.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Yeah, Mike.
Right, but not like, that's never I'm going to force myself to stay away from you.
Well, but that's one way to deprive your, like, there's probably a million other ways to deprive something in the relationship, or like hold off on it. I think maybe before we jump into relationships, remember remember when we were talking about like the brain's system of like balancing pleasure and pain, and how if you overindulge in something, like your brain will just induce pain. Like that's the rat whose wheel starts moving on him, right? So
Mhm.
like the pain comes no matter what. So maybe instead of like, if you're saying so that you love something more, it's maybe more like so that I can choose the pain, right? Like
Yeah.
if
Like,
I'm overindulging in something, my like I will have some sort of induced like depressive state, or like or my body will start to feel like crap or something. And like, although my actions led to that, I don't feel like I chose to induce that. But if
right,
I'm saying, if I hold off on something and that's creating a bit of discomfort because I want it, I'm the one choosing to do that.
right.
And then I'm also choosing to like eat it, drink it, engage in it, whatever the activity is. Like, I think there's something to be said about being the one, like being the rat that like moves the wheel.
Right.
So,
That's I agree with that. Yes, Mike.
well, so here's the second thought, right? Deprivation has a very negative connotation to it.
Yes, that's why I tried to specify deprive instead of deprivation. But yes,
Even deprive has a negative connotation to it.
true.
Abstain.
Aren't we just talking about self-control?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what we said
Well,
earlier.
yes and no, I guess, because
Well,
self-control would be like managing something, but I think there's
but
something to be said. Like I wouldn't call standing in the shower and cranking it cold as I'm exercising self-control. It's like I'm intentionally exposing myself to something that has some benefits that aren't going to be readily uh, available to me in this moment necessarily, except for maybe like I have a shock response and then I calm myself and maybe my anxiety drops in the moment, right? And I
yep.
feel more alert for the day. But like that's kind of an intentional, I guess I view self-control as more like, here's something I want
Yeah,
and I'm weighing out, should I grab it or not?
right.
And yes, I see where you're at there, but I would also argue that what you're talking about then isn't deprivation, it's exposure.
Well, that's what I was saying earlier. That's an
Yeah, like
exposure.
I'm not
Yeah.
depriving myself of hot water, I'm exposing myself to cold.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I still think because I understand too. There, that's why I said earlier too. Like we are talking about self control, but I do think, like, I don't think this blanket applies to all things in life. But I do think, for example, for me, if I'm drinking 100 ounces of soda every day, it kind of just feels like,
I can get it anytime I want. I
yeah,
can have as much as I
yeah,
want. And it
it's
starts
not
to
a
lose
treat. It's not a
its.
treat anymore. It's just a thing that I do. And that's actually, we could say this is, so you don't have to say, I will not talk to my spouse, but you do have to say, I need to be intentional to make sure this thing stays special to me somehow.
Or like we hold tension sexually for a while
Yeah.
instead of just like,
We
you
have
know,
sex because I feel horny right now. So we should have sex.
yeah.
Like it's like, I'm going to hold off on this because I want this to be more meaningful or whatever. Or even I'm going to spend money and time to plan this date because I want this to stay something significant to me.
Right.
That's
I,
just,
I
you're
don't
depriving yourself of an Xbox time so that you can go spend time with your wife and make that something meaningful.
and I guess that's part of my curiosity, right? Because to me, everything you just said, I'm like, no,
That's
you're just
different.
exercising
Curiosity.
self-control. And so like my curiosity is like, do we use the word deprivation because it makes it seem more significant?
Well, that's not, I mean, this isn't like when you say do we, I think this is just something that Matt, at some point you brought up and I've thought about, and I did see an article on this. The article I saw was saying you deprive ourselves of things so that we can avoid deprivation. Actually, kind of with this idea of like, if I don't deprive myself, like I love, I think his thing said, if I love pumpkin pie so much, but I only eat it these 2 times a year. He said, if I ate it every single day, I'm going to live in deprivation because my health is gone. So I will live in deprivation of all the other things I want to be able to go and do. So yes, is that self-control? Sure. But he's saying,
Right.
I want this, but I'm depriving myself of it, which is the same. I mean, maybe it's semantics, but the
Well,
principle is the same of what we're getting at of like
right.
what benefits could come from that.
No, and I guess that's my point, right? Like, and again, sorry, this is just words. Like, this is one of Jenner's biggest pet peeves. about me is I will get like hung up on word choice. And she will often say to me, Mike, that's not what they meant. And my response is always, well, then they shouldn't have said it. Like, I'm sorry, that's what the word means. If that's not the word you wanted to use, then don't say it.
But I do want to use the word deprive.
Right. But so that's where I'm curious, like, do we use it because it makes it feel like we're accomplishing something more than just exercising self-control? Is there some mental benefit in saying I deprived myself of that?
Yes.
As opposed to simply saying I exercised self-control and only had 3 sodas today instead of 7.
I think it could be. So. I think it could be, again, back to that brain balance, right? Like if I'm using a word like deprive, what I'm telling myself is like, this is my, I mean, it sounds weird to say it this way, I guess, but if we just think our brain is constantly trying to balance those two things, then I can say, this is my dose of pain, right? Yeah. I picked it and it is deprivation. And so, and I can do that, right? I can face that. I can deal with that. I think that's a really empowering way to talk about it, because then it could also say then I'm freely able to choose this reward, right? I don't think that people need to kind of well, sometimes you have to kind of work through shoulds and musts and guilt and all that stuff to do something rewarding for yourself, right? But I guess if you think about it more like, rather than existing on a teeter-totter where when it tips towards pain, you just slide down that way, and when it tips towards pleasure, you're just super happy and slide the other way. If you're in like a position above that where you are dropping, your choices onto either side of it, like mentally for me, that's like I'm in the driver's seat, right? But if life is happening to me, right, then I feel like I don't know when it's going to swing this way or that, and everything feels like luck and chance, and that, I mean, that's a really, obviously we don't control everything, but I think if you have a healthier locus of control where you're kind of like, I'm the one making some of these choices, at least, particularly the ones that involve pain and discomfort, 2 things happen, right? Like I don't feel blindsided and have that like stress response that the rat on the second wheel feels. And I'm telling myself I can handle hard things. So I don't shy away from potentially rewarding situations that require more effort as much, because now I know I can do that hard thing, right? Even if the reward is delayed.
Well, and that's like, I was having this conversation with a guy just this morning where we were talking about this idea of, like December is always a crazy month for most people. Mm-hmm. His December is shaping up to be abnormally crazy even for December. And he just said, I'm just kind of resigned to this is what it is. And like we've talked before about how I struggle with language that makes me feel weakened. And so when he said, I'm resigned to this is what December is going to be, I bristled at it, because I thought, no, you've just pushed yourself into a corner, and I didn't like that. And so we talked about the idea of that there's this fine line between resignation and acceptance, right? I'm accepting that December is going to be crazy. I could do things to make it less crazy, but for whatever reasons I'm choosing not to. I'm choosing to let December be crazy to get to January. And to me, like that, there was significance in that choice, because then he's not just the victim of December, mm-hmm. right? When December gets crazy and chaotic, yeah, but I chose this. And I could do things to alter it if I choose to. But right now, what it's costing me, like what it would cost me to alter it, is more than I want to pay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let it run this way until it becomes too much. And if it, like, hopefully it doesn't become too much and I can just let it ride out.
You might also say he was depriving himself of a comfortable December so he could love January more.
Or he could just start a band called Victim of December.
Oh, yeah. Victim of December. So here's,
but I guess when I'm with you on word stuff. Like
Me too.
my wife hates it too. Well, I don't know if she hates it, but she notices it, I'll say. But yeah, like I think when I hear resign, I feel like that to me says like reluctance,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like bend over and take it type of
Yeah.
mentality, right? Um, and when I hear acceptance, I know what it means, right? But I'll oftentimes say for us in our culture, acceptance sounds a bit like resignation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I prefer the word acknowledge, right? Because it is saying
Oh,
this
that
is
is
something
better.
I can't do anything about. I'm acknowledging that it is this way, and I'm letting go of any illusion of control,
Mm-hmm.
so that I can not find things that I can control to change that thing I just acknowledged, but like let that be what it's going to be, and then turn toward what is something that I not so much like what's something that's going to make December better, because then it puts you back in that position of like, well, I just
Right.
acknowledged December is going to be December, but now I've bought back into some illusion, right? And I think, yeah, I think like in a similar way when I just did that like cold plunge thing at my brother's house, and it's
That
like
video
the
was rad,
sooner
by the
he
way.
told me, he's like, you're going to get in, and like the first 15 seconds you won't be able to breathe. So I knew that, right? And so I acknowledge that what like the water isn't going to change temperature, my breath isn't going to somehow stay in me, but the thing I can do is regulate my breathing, right? And it actually only took like, I don't know, maybe 5 to 7 seconds to get my breathing under control. And then pretty quickly the water temperature didn't change, but like whether I was numb or I don't know what, like I felt no pain anywhere except for like later my feet started to hurt. But um I think there's like I like our relationship to pain maybe changes through this. I think when you expose yourself to difficult things or deprive yourself, or I'm going to use all of our words, resign, accept, acknowledge, whatever we do, like I think your relationship to the inevitability of pain and suffering in life can be healthier, and you're not afraid of it, right? It's still not desirable, but it's like there's there's nothing more miserable than trying to make life happy and fair and just like kicking against nature in a way. Like it will never be those things all the time, right? So like some level of like closeness and friendship and whatever you want to call it with pain and suffering and you know inequity and unfairness doesn't mean you're a bad person. If you're like, it just means you're kind of rolling with what is. And I don't know. I think more like on a mental level, when I do things like that, it really helps me center myself in a different way that that acknowledges some of the realities of life, if that makes sense. Like metaphorically speaking, right? Like cold water. I don't have to be in cold water, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
not like a necessary part of life. But there are plenty of things that produce that exact same shock response in me. Um, like an angry email or like a last minute request for something or a kid freaking out about something. Like my body does the same thing. So I get to practice in that moment, exposing myself to it under conditions that I design, and I can kind of like work through it. Right. So I think that's one of the benefits.
I think, I mean, we've already run out of time on this bad boy, but excuse me. I think one of the things that I think about these different words, one of the reasons in my mind why I actually like, in some ways at least, or in different ways, deprive more than self-control. Self-control can sometimes sound like, at my very nature, I'm a lazy slob, turd, hedonist, whatever, that has to be controlled. And I can control this, like versus deprive, which is like, I'm going to intentionally keep this thing away from me. It still is requiring self-control to keep this thing away from me. But I think the reason I like it is because what you're describing about with this exposure, I think, yeah, we could reframe your exposure to the pain by saying depriving of comfort, right?
Hmm.
It's a two-part process, or it's a both and. But in both those, I feel like they are intentional. I'm intentionally doing this because I want this other thing. And I think that's what is significant. I think that's one of the biggest benefits is I know I'm doing this because I want to see what my body's capable of. I want to push it to its limit. I want to, I don't know, see how long I can not eat.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like someone listened to our podcast and then didn't eat for 4 days.
They sure drank a lot of soda, though.
They just lived off it.
You can never have too much.
So, and it is, Mike, you bring up good points. It's like, yeah, I wouldn't ever say to somebody, if you want to love your wife more, take 3 weeks off and don't talk to her at all. You know, like I'd be like, well, that's freaking stupid.
No, I think there is something to
what you were describing earlier,
Yeah.
I think, for example, like when it comes to like sexual intimacy,
Yeah.
I think absolutely you can create a different kind of like, I want to create this longing between us
Yeah.
that helps me feel desire for you and feel desired back. And it
Mhm.
makes the moments we're doing this more intentional and meaningful,
Mhm.
100%. But I also think I am depriving myself of other. I can't just take my relationship in isolation and say, what do I deprive here?
Mhm.
I have to say, I'm going to deprive myself of other things over here because I want this here.
Mhm.
There's something I want over there. For example, people who have problems with video gaming. I get spouses who call me and say, my husband's always playing video games all the time. It's like, yeah, I want my relationship with my wife to be more meaningful and intense. So I give up time over here with this thing that I love. I deprive myself of this thing. So I don't think it's like it's compartmentalized to relationships. I think that's broadly across, but I do think there are specific things inside a relationship that I think there's benefit to saying. It's, for example, even to a degree, and you could just call this delayed gratification, but foreplay sometimes is like, I'm depriving myself of the thing I really want right now, which is let's just get to it. And it's like, no, build this thing, make it meaningful, like hold back from this thing you really want.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about like the relational thing you're talking about is those things work when it's a conversation. They don't work if it's one person deciding for the couple, this is what's going to be.
Sure, I can't just decide I'm going to deprive. I'm going to build our longing for each other by not having sex with you for 4 weeks.
Right?
Like,
you. No, that's going to be a problem.
How long have you guys haven't had sex in 9 years? Why not? It's a ritual I'm practicing. There'll be a benefit
in 10 years. And that's the thing, right? Like with all of the stuff we've talked about up until the relational, it is all very individual. I can make that choice for myself. When we step into the relational world, no, you can't. It has to become a conversation. If you want to exercise more self-control or deprive yourself of certain things in your sexual relationship, that's great as long as your spouse is on board with it. Like that's a conversation that has to be had with your spouse. And that's, I think, one of the big differences there, right? Like it's when we step into relationships, we no longer are autonomous in what we're doing.
Well, and I will say too, just as we kind of wrap this up, like one of the things I thought about, because, November is like, there's the no shave November, Movember. Is that kind of also no shave November? Then there's, I don't know if you guys have heard this one, no FAP November.
No FAP?
You know what FAP is?
Yeah.
So no FAP, and FAP is the thing on the internet it's essentially the sound of masturbation. FAP. And so no FAP November means don't look at porn and don't masturbate for November. And people will do that sometimes as a way of saying, pulling somebody away from porn, saying, hey, get back off of this thing. It's occupying too much. But also a way of saying, because it's depriving you, this is the wrong kind of depriving, of like a more meaningful relationship elsewhere. So you deprive yourself of this thing to try to create those things over there. But I think about these things even during this month because you see it around social media and thinking about I guess just to be clear, when I talk about deprivation and stuff, Matt, like the stuff you're talking about, I don't think everyone, even though I said, tell me something you think everyone should do this. Yeah. I don't think everyone should do ice baths. I've never done one. Yeah. I'm curious to. And I don't think that that like everything in your life should be deprived. But I do think there's absolutely benefit to certain things. I think anybody listening to this could say, I know I can cut back on this thing, even if I'm not giving it up, just saying I want to make this more meaningful and more intentionally approach this thing. Or Matt, what you're talking about, I want to, it's almost like learning what you are capable of doing, what my body can do, how it can respond, and how it can react.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to do this ice bath thing, or I want to run a marathon, or I want to do a triathlon because I want to see what my body can do. There's a lot to be gained in our sense of self and confidence in that. Or even, I mean, you could flip this and say, you know, there are couples where instead of saying we're going to not have sex for this long to build this between us, they'll say we're going to have sex every night for a year. I've seen couples of, you know, they'll write stories about it. And that's, you are kind of, in some ways, you're depriving yourself of something else, or you're exposing yourself in a weird way to a different kind of pain.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I mean, we've done this 37 times in a row. What are we doing now?
Yeah.
And it does require you to say, how do I engage in this differently? I think that's the part to me that's so significant, is how are we intentionally engaging in some process, knowing, because if someone threw you in a cold bath, you would not have the same response to like, I lowered myself in, I regulated my breathing. You'd get out and you'd be pissed at the dude who threw you in. But this way it's like, okay, I'm doing this. And I think being able to feel, I think that helps us feel much more confident, and capable and happy in life, knowing that like, I can take care of myself. I know how to regulate these things. I think exposure and sometimes deprivation or depriving ourselves is necessary for that. I'm out.
Mike, give us a Kansas City send-off.
Prepare yourself. I'm going to give you like a solid 10 seconds while So, spacemen, deprive yourself of something. No, make it the man space. Never deprive yourself of this. And then come back next time and catch us on the man space.
Hail to the Chiefs. They're the ones we all say hail to.
The Chiefs.
Why aren't you eating ribs?
Yeah, all the time.
I know, I should be, right?
I was going to
Because
say.
apparently burn ends are their...
Oh, that's right. Kansas City burn ends.
Yeah, that's their real thing.
Yeah. They're like, I mean, I guess burnt ends here don't always have sauce. Burn ends in Kansas City are like real glazy.
I made mine.
Like
I do too, yeah, but
I want my burn ends, I want them to be like really sweet.
Yeah.
So I put crap loads of brown sugar on them.
I'm trying to remember if I've actually done like brisket burnt ends. I've done them
mine
with
needed work, but I've done them.
But it's really like a small section of the brisket though.
Yeah, it's just the point.
But
so
just
here's
the
the thing
side.
Yeah, well, I actually cut up a bunch of it just because I was like, this is too much meat. I'm just going to try this out.
You should try that next time I do a brisket because I like slices from the point, but
yeah, me too. There's a lot of good fat in there. But
here's the thing I don't understand.
Yeah,
how can they do burnt ends really well but not brisket?
What, Kansas City?
Yeah,
you better shut your mouth. Don't
Kansas
say that
City,
outside your house.
They don't brag about their brisket though, do they?
I don't know. They probably would.
We were talking to a guy our first trip up here, and he was from Houston. And we said, all right, man, barbecue. Like, this is Kansas City, so where's some good barbecue? And he goes, no, you're not going to find good barbecue.
Really?
And I go, what? And
Famous Dave's?
No, well, he goes, no, because you guys want brisket. And he goes, they don't do brisket.
Huh.
And he
I
goes,
bet you they would if you said, show me. It's the show me state. You make it a bunch of free briskets.
Show me.
It's I think anytime I've had brisket, even actually a bunch of the brisket I had here at that barbecue thing I went to, a lot of people don't do a good smoke flavor to it.
Yeah.
You just end up feeling like you're eating roast beef. It's like,
well,
that's fine. Roast beef.
Like anytime I had brisket from Famous Dave's, that's what it like. And so my friend that had served his mission in Texas was all excited about brisket. And we had some at Famous Dave's, and I thought, why? This is just smoky, like not even a good smoky, just smoky roast beef. And then I got down here and I was like, oh, this is brisket. Okay. So yeah, he told us that they don't do brisket well. They do burnt ends well, but not brisket.
I wonder, well, I guess it would probably still be a cut of brisket, but like you can do really good burnt ends with a chuck roast and I'm trying to think of other cuts of that's like a way cheaper if all you want is burnt ends.
Well, maybe that's what they do.
Burnt ends or
you told me about that, dude.
So good.
And I want to do that. You said it was like like bacon on steroids.
It's like
glazed in like
well,
peach.
when you do like the sweet stuff, it's
Yeah.
like the fat is almost like a marshmallow on
Yeah.
top of a nice slab of bacon.
Dude, I had my friend was telling about one of the places we went to. I can't remember which one, but he said they have a peach glazed pork belly. And I was like, I want that.
Yeah.
One day. I haven't smoked anything in a long time.
I'm trying to remember the last time I did. I guess it was just a couple weeks ago, but
I just recently for Thanksgiving we've just kind of taken it over and started making our flank steak that we make. It's actually from Dave and Lindsay. It's just
nice.
you have to marinate it for like 24 hours at least in this. It's tomato juice and meat tenderizer.
That's it.
Well, and garlic. Yeah, and garlic.
Huh.
Garlic powder. It's that flank steak and skirt steak is like it's the toughest meat.
Yeah, I was gonna say, isn't that what they use for fajitas?
Yeah, they use
Skirt
skirt steak. Yeah. So you gotta
a flank steak's a little bit thicker.
a little bit. They're pretty similar.
Yeah.
It's really actually for some reason it's really hard to find flank steak. So most of the time we end up using skirt steak.
And you just cut it.
Make sure you just cut it against the grain. So otherwise you're just gonna be like
I had
I think
fajitas
that's what
one
happened.
time.
You remember your very first brisket when I was like, it's got good flavor.
That was Rob's compliment to my horrible brisket.
It's
Real
got
good flavor.
I don't
It tastes like a towel.
I bet it wasn't like a horrible. I bet it wasn't a horrible brisket. I bet you just cut it wrong.
Yeah, maybe.
Because that way, as I'm thinking about it now, it should not. It shouldn't be. No brisket should be that tough. Because it was like, dude, I can't get through this
Yeah.
unless you cut it with the grain. And I'm just trying to pull
Yeah.
meat from meat. Like it's just not going to work. Anyway, where are we, Mike? It's like you're not even here. Oh, this is my story I was going to tell you. Well,
Oh,
not you, Mike. It was for our listeners. Mike, this is just so funny to me. Mike just took us on a tour of his house, walking around with his laptop, and Matt, out of the blue, just stands up rapidly and goes and lays down on the couch because he was getting motion sick. I don't know why it's so funny to me.
Dude, anybody who knows me will not be surprised by that story. Back in the day, you know the station wagons with the rear facing back
Oh,
seat.
dude, I could not sit in those.
yeah.
I couldn't either, but my sister talked me into it and said it was going to be fun. But we were like in the mountains or on the coast, so windy roads,
Mhm.
and it had the electric back door, or not back door, back window.
Yeah,
Back window.
That thing came down, and I spewed all over the bumper. Didn't take long.
The only time I think there's some story in our family of someone puking on the side of like inside the car, didn't get the door open fast enough. But I remember driving through Glacier and I couldn't.
Like you were driving?
No, this is
Okay.
when I was young. I was all excited because my mom had to sit in the back seat after that because I was like I puked all over the side of a building. And my dad just went over and kicked a bunch of dirt on it. And I was like, what is he doing? And now I'm like, oh, I get it. But I was seriously like, Dad, shouldn't we like tell him to hose it off or something? Puke on a building and walk off, man. I seriously wondered that. Oh, I just got an Apple notification that said U.S. suicide rates reached an all-time high in 2022.
That's from
Really?
Apple.
Yeah,
Man,
that's relevant.
kind of.
I mean, it's relevant to a podcast about
yeah.
men and mental
Yeah.
health. We tend to have higher suicide rates than women.
Yeah.
Shoot. Well, now the topic, I can't
On that
introduce it right
note.
off of that. I can't.
I was gonna say, way to go, dude.
Well, because when I said earlier that I got sick, and it kind of ties into our topic, because that missing flavor,
hmm
when you get it back, it's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
this might be the most amazing thing I've ever eaten. It's a little bit like when people fast. If you fast for like, I don't know. I guess maybe some people feel this way because I talk to some people and they're like, oh yeah, I do intermittent fasting. I'm like, oh, what do you do? They're like, well, I stop eating at like 6 and I don't eat again until like 7 the next morning. I was like, I do that every night. Am I just fasting every night? Isn't that what we all do? Like, don't we all not eat while we sleep?
That's why it's break
Well,
fast.
Rob,
in the morning.
they start at 6.
I guess
That extra 4 to 5 hours in there.
That's what I guess people do eat dinner at like 8, 9 o'clock at night. I don't get that, but
Yeah.
that feels like I'm going to eat a big meal and then go sleep.
Mhm.
It's like, that doesn't work for me. But so this deprivation thing, we've talked about doing this for a long time.
Mhm.
And it's funny because it's been on my mind more and more lately because, as our loyal listeners know, I love soda.
Wait, are you about to tell us that you're...
No, I'm not giving it up.
Okay.
I shouldn't say it like that. I do periodically go through times thinking the way I drink it so much, and my fixation on it is part of my problem. But I drink it so much that it feels like this isn't even
enjoyable.
Yeah, it's like, whatever, sure. I like going to get one. It seems exciting.
And then it's never not enjoyable, Rob.
Well, isn't it just that it's the ritual?
The other day I came home because I couldn't taste, so I hadn't been drinking any. So I was like, well, I'm not going to waste the calories. And I come home and my kids had went to the gas station and got drinks, and just seeing, I was like,
without me,
I want to go so bad. One of my clients was actually just like, you like the flavor better out of a fountain? I was like, I do. I was like, but I just like the process of like getting in the car and going to the gas station. Like, sorry for other loyal listeners, to the drink store.
Drink store.
Oh.
Drink for your car and drink for you.
We hope you enjoyed the episode. Please remember to
rate
and
review.
Please, we desperately need it.